T1 had arguably the most unlikely run of all time to win at Masters Bangkok. The team was imploding internally, with arguments between players leading to an assistant coach playing the qualifying matches for Bangkok, and the first game of the tournament against Vitality. We at Platchat thought they were going to be the worst team at the event, but then they beat the best team from every region to win a Masters trophy once Sylvan got back into the roster. And Sylvan himself ended the tournament with a ridiculous amount of assists, enough for some to call for him to be the MVP. We underrated T1 because we weren't paying attention to one of the most important stats in Valorant. And it's not about how many assists you get, but let's start the story there anyway. You get assists for doing damage on a teammate's kill or by helping them with utility in some way. Flashes, stuns, and scans are the most obvious examples, but the most common way to rack up assists are suppresses, smoke kills, and heals. Before 2023, nobody had ever finished a global event with more than 0.5 assists per round before. It just hadn't been done, but then at lock-in, 12 players all at once managed to break that record. Clearly something had changed between 2022 and 2023. First of all, lock-in was single elimination, meaning small sample sizes. 5 out of 12 of those players who broke that 0.5 APR record were defeated 0-1, and they just happened to have an unusually high assist-heavy performance in those matches. Secondly, in September and December 2022, the devs changed how assists worked, massively boosting the time period in which you could be granted assists for your utility pressure. And thirdly, Lock-in saw a 41% pick rate of KO. 6 out of 12 of the record breakers used that agent. Since that change in late 2022, assists have been overtuned, and most people don't look at assist per round as a meaningful stat. It's pretty useless. But if somebody puts up extraordinary numbers, it's worth investigating a bit further. And Sylvan didn't just get an extraordinary number of assists. He smashed records, got more assists than he got kills, and he won the tournament. This is the average player at Masters Bangkok. They got 0.7 kills per round and 0.31 assists per round. And here are all of the other players in history, other than Sylvan, who have had more assists than kills at global events. Here you can see Sadak at Masters Tokyo. You see a lot of people from Lock-in, like I said. There's Paditek from Masters Madrid as well, who got more assists than he did kills, though he did lose both of those games. And it's actually interesting, only Borkum has had a win, a single match win while putting up these numbers, more assists than kills. It just simply doesn't translate to victory. The color of the circle, by the way, indicates what event it's from. The size of the circle indicates how many rounds they've played, to give you an example of the sample size. But with Borkum being the only winning player here, that is massively different to Sylvan. Somehow Sylvan didn't just win one match, he won 6 to lift a Masters trophy with more assists than he got kills. So Sylvan did something absolutely unique by winning a tournament with more assists than he got kills. But what if we compare him to people who just got a lot of assists no matter what the kills were? Here's all of the players who broke that 0.5 assist per round barrier at a global event. And there are some really impressive performances here. It's not just fraudulent stuff from Lock-in. Tens, for example, lifted a trophy in Madrid, fragging super heavy while getting good assist impact with smokes, flashes, suppresses. But he, like almost everybody else, only made the list once. There are only 2 names who stand out for their consistent appearances, Mako and Ethan. Mako makes the list 3 times, getting over 0.5 assists per round in every single global in 2023. He fragged decently during Tokyo and Champs, but then he went hard at Lock-in to get his team a semi-finals. Ethan also makes the list 3 times for the same 3 events with Evil Geniuses, averaging even higher assist numbers to make a finals at Tokyo and win his first Valorant trophy at Champs 2023. Now, let's zoom out to get a better picture, add Sylvan to the list, and then filter out the players who didn't win a match while playing this style. So these are only winners with big assists, and he towers over the competition, which only has 2 other trophy winners in it, Tens and Ethan, with 0.64 assists per round and 0.64 kills per round as well, ending the tournaments with 2 more assists than kills. Of these, only 16% were damaging assists, while 84% were utility assists. And while you might think of damage assists as better, it often indicates that you've lost a fight and someone else is cleaning up your mess. From Sylvan's 41 damaging assists, he lost the fight and had somebody else get the kill 49% of the time. He did damage to somebody who escaped 9 times, he double-faced an opponent 8 times, he did damage with a molly or a brim ult 3 times, and then he also got an assist for breaking an Omen ultimate, which is extremely fraudulent. That shouldn't really count. So instead of focusing on the damage assists, Let's instead take a look at utility assists. The Paranoia accounted for 39 assists at 18%, while Astropul and Stun only got 2 each at 1%. Stimbeacon got Sylvan 15 assists, but that means 74% of total util assists were from smokes. Even if Sylvan only got assists from smokes, he still would have ranked 9th in the tournament for overall assists. That's mad. And while I was watching a lot of these rounds, I noticed a key difference in how T1 was playing compared to other teams that allowed Sylvan to get these numbers. T1 would hold the smoke super tight, choosing to give up cover, not play backside, and box their opponents in at the choke. Let's take a look at this example. Look at that Taeho ultimate. It's anticipating them being in backside, and they're not at all. They're tucked, close, with a Sova ultimate, denying space. Here's another example on Abyss. They could be playing backside here, but Sylvan with the Paranoia TPs forward with a Paranoia Honk combo, and they choose to stuff them with a Crossfire, even with 3 players, never allowing G2 to get through the choke point. Here's another example from Split. Sylvan dodges the drone, dodges the flash, throws out a Paranoia, and then they try to set up a Crossfire in the choke point. This round, G2 can't get the B hit working, so they rotate all the way out, and they're going all the way over to A, and you'll see an exact similar thing. Isu has managed to hit the teleport, so good prediction from them on the rotates. But again, do they play elbow? Do they play heaven? Do they play offsite for retake? No, of course they don't. They fight in the choke point. Seize, nade into the choke point, double upped in hell, trying to deny them. And the same thing happens here on Pearl. This is the final map of the grand finals against G2. Ignore what Jorg was doing with his ult, and instead look at the positioning of the T1 players. They're not playing behind the box. They're not playing in secret for spam kills. They're not playing offsite for retake. They are fighting, scrapping, playing aggressive, trying to deny, and playing up close to the choke point where the smokes would be. Even in that final moment, you see Isu holding the flash ready to play off Buzz's contact at front side. Now, T1 ended the tournament with pretty mortal stat lines overall, because they lost the tournament. They lost matches twice, and they won close matches when they won. But their defense win rate was over 52%, while only 27% of those wins came through retakes. That means around 2/3 of their rounds on defense were won by just killing the opponents before they get the spike down. And T1 barely allowed their opponents to get the spike down. They played to deny the plant 47% of the time. Vitality denied the plant only 26% of the time, while G2 denied the plant only 33%, both opting really heavily into a retake meta between 2/3 and 3/4 of the time. Even EDG, who love a brawl on defense, only denied the plant 37% of the time. This is the biggest stylistic difference between T1 and every other top team at Masters Bangkok. This is the hidden statistic that you can't get unless you dig into it a little bit. With the meta leaning so heavily into utility, most teams chose to play off-site defenses like G2 here, giving up a site for retake fully in some situations. That means you avoid dying to the util combos from the attackers, you force the attackers to exec and use some pieces of util, and then you can retake with a huge util advantage.
Deep lurk back around, try to re-clear over towards Garage. Quick exit, the gate crash coming in. Sylvan not going to be able to find the timing. Leaf keeps his way forward, and Meteor, he's the one leading the charge. Didn't want to try to invest a kill contract here at all, it seems. But now the spammage is coming through. T1 needs to try to counteract this, but that 100 Fury is far too late! It's already over!
Here's another example from G2 in the finals against T1. You can see Valen was thinking about playing on site, teleports backwards again, abandons his smoke, leaves the site completely, doesn't want to die to the Raze rocket. And now when they come back in, massive amounts of utility to work with. There's the Taeho ultimate, there's the Taeho salvos, Taeho's stun even comes over towards Hell to box Isu into a corner and let Valen take the kill. There was a Paranoia, Jonah P still has double breach flashes. This was the style that the majority of teams were playing. And when I say majority, I mean literally every team apart from T1. But T1 went in the exact opposite way, playing in front of the utility combos, crushing attackers inside the smokes to avoid having to play retake against post-plant comps that had salvos, mollies, ultimates. And they even crafted compositions that worked around denying space and flood defending. This is how their Raze ISO Sova comp on Lotus worked. They use the vulnerable to deny some rubble control, and then Meteor with his ultimate becomes like long-range artillery support. Isu can play to hard anchor inside of his cages here, and he knows that he will have support from vulnerables, from sometimes Sova ultimate, but in this situation, look, he hides inside, Meteor swings in, they fight aggro, the ISO shield lets him deny the showstopper value, the ISO ultimate's about to grab another player and help Isu on site, so it buys so much time, and it means that Vitality are never in a safe position to be able able to get the plant down. They're always playing to flood, always playing to deny and fight the choke points, or at least fight on the sites. Their Euro ISO composition on Haven, by the way, also works in pretty much the exact same way. So we're going to take a look at an example of that. So take a look at Buzz. He's already had 2 kills off the back of his operator by fighting over towards A long in a pretty classic way. And then, as the Breach ultimate comes through, all of the attacking utility when you watch people attack into T1 is aimed towards backside because they're expecting people to be playing normally. And here, look at the amount of help that Buzz gets in short. He gets the paranoia, he gets a smoke on site, he gets a vulnerable from his ISO, he gets the ISO ult to deny, and nobody's looking at Buzz! If you pay attention to the site anchor, the flood players come through. If you pay attention to the flood players, the anchor is going to kill 5 of you. Here's them doing it again on split. Look at how they defend here. Nade into the choke point, Ray's ultimate flies forwards, and they're throwing bodies into the maw. And look at the rotates. Look at those 3 players rotating in. They've got the freest rotates of their life. They get in, they know that the pace is denied, they know that they'll be able to rotate in, and you're just always facing into 5 players because of the amount of time that those site anchors buy. So if this high assist rate from Sylvan is to do with how T1 play, surely Carpe should also have high assist numbers. He had 0.38 APR in his loss to Vitality, would have put him at 11th highest overall if he'd played the whole tournament. So clearly there are some big differences between Sylvan up here and Carpe. You know, decent but not amazing. So let's compare apples to apples again. Round 1 Sylvan, round 1 Carpe. Carpe buys Ghost on Fracture. He doesn't buy a Stim Beacon and Armor. And look at how he's using his smokes. Look at how he's positioning himself. They've gone for a north side crunch, and as he runs back in, he only smokes A main. He doesn't smoke sand. He smokes sand late, he doesn't think about it quite in time, and that doesn't set him up for success, or set his team up for success. In contrast, Sylvan here positions himself over towards the canteen area at the start for an early A main smoke, and then he gets himself into an anchor position over towards B dice. When he needs to rotate, he can use the Stim Beacon to be able to get a faster rotate, and then as soon as he gets into position, he's going to be smoking A main and sand to be able to deny. Look, there's the sand smoke. He doesn't need to smoke A main just yet because the thorns are still there, but as soon as he gets it into position, the rest of T1 are there to be able to deny this site hit coming through. Now he whiffs a little bit and they lose the round overall, but this is a good example, I think, an apples to apples example of how it happens. Let's take another example. Take a look at the starting position here of Carpe. It's an eco round, but he's making his way over towards B. Wasn't really positioned in a spot where he could add early smoke utility for his team. And then when he does smoke, he smokes in a spot that it's pretty easy for them to be able to get through. He doesn't smoke the choke point. He smokes from kind of like map control, but map control that nobody's really fighting with. So this smoke in it halls is just wasted. Then he has to throw another smoke for A main, and then he's going to refresh this smoke on A main. So he leaves sand open the entire time too. So we're going to take a look at a similar kind of starting position protocol idea, but from Sylvan on the B side. So you take a look at Carpe here. The other thing to note, actually, is that Carpe doesn't have his molly out ready. So he has to pull his molly out as the hit comes through, which means the molly is late. It's all about the details, guys, in terms of maximizing the value. Here, we look at Sylvan defending on the B side. He immediately positions himself in canteen so he can do an early smoke for A if there is A noise. No A noise this round, so he gets back into a high-low setup with Meteor. That's great. He's going to save his smokes for way longer than Carpe does. That's a big difference between these two guys. He's not using utility until the attackers really look like they're coming close to a choke point.
But again, they do have Simon's ult here.
And then as he sees a little bit of pressure towards B main, as he gets droned off the angle, there's the B main smoke. As the Teho ult comes in and he's under a lot of pressure, smoke down, on site, Stim Beacon inside of it to give him more maneuverability, and another smoke to get thrown down too for him to be able to play around. He manages to work himself inside the B main smoke, gets a kill, gets a timing on Chichu, and then can even use his Brim ultimate as he backs off into the safe position over towards B main. Really, really excellent Brimstone utility and saving it for exactly when the site hit comes through, never wasting it early on in the round. Here's another difference between them on buy. Carpe was throwing this B-long smoke that just got pushed through every single round. 5 out of 6 of the first rounds, he threw that B-long smoke. Sylvan didn't throw that B-long smoke at all, and instead was throwing like reactive smokes over towards short, for example, after his short player dies. And then, once they actually hit B, he has more smokes than Carpe does to be able to defend the site itself. He still has both smokes, throws them down, throws down the molly. He even recognizes this Thorns is coming through, and by breaking it allows his Flood players to get into the site and takes down 2 with a teammate, completely boxing out EDG. Beautiful understanding of when the site hit was going to come through, and really good focus on Thorns to be able to let his Flood players in. Here's Carpe again. And this one is just about looking at what they do on the attack side. And it's a very small adjustment. We're just going to look at the molly. Here as Carpe runs down short, the spacing's a little bit wonky, but he doesn't molly this area. So Kix is able to get through and get a shot onto Carpe, punish him for getting the plant down. In contrast, let's have a look at Sylvan. Sylvan, you can see, is holding his utility ready to pop. Instantly ready to go for it with the leading with the stim beacon, double smokes go down, and then molly into that middle area between the 2 boxes that you see it bouncing off right where Kankang is. It gets the punish onto Kankang. Do they lose a player? Yes, but they always go 1 for 1, and there's another assist, which adds to the tally. It's this additional precision with utility that contributes to the difference between Sylvan and Carpe. But it's also because T1 improved over the course of the tournament. We'll take a look at them here with 2 examples, one against a site pop and one against a default. And I think the site pop is really easy to defend against. That's this one here against EDG. You know when the site hit's coming through, you know what you need to be doing in this moment, right? You know that as soon as they throw these early pieces of utility that indicate we are about to hit B, you can start sending your own defensive utility. Smokes go down, molly goes down, nade inside of the smoke, a haunt to be able to fight with, a flash to be able to fight with as well. And again, they push forwards and barrel through and box them all into the choke.
You've got to find something else to do here, EDG, or find a new layer to this, because they're just getting decimated. This is not difficult for T1. This looks easy.
But what's harder is playing against a slow default, because there, the timings are not as precise and easy to get a handle on. So in this defensive setup, T1 are getting information B-long with Itsu. They are also getting information hookah from Meteor, who's kind of challenging it aggressively. And it's Stax' job to figure out when to rotate. So if he hears noise B, he'll rotate unless the knife sees somebody showers. In this case, both things happen, so Stax is kind of stuck in between. And EDG's slow default works. They create fake pressure A and create a situation where they can hit B with only 2 players defending the site. So how do T1 still get away with this? In this situation, they're able to have Meteor define the timing, swing into the site hit. So pay attention here to when EDG give away that they're actually hitting. Stim Beacon goes down, and immediately Smoggy gets clocked as Meteor swings into that fight. The fact that he's now stopped the hookah push allows him to throw the ultimate out, create a bit of pressure for Itsu, and Itsu runs forward into elbow to kill Kankang. It's mad how T1 were playing so differently. And I think it's also this difference that caused a lot of problems for the other teams. Because it was probably only T1 that had this style at all, even in scrims.
Put a fork in it!
Here's an example from Fracture. It's a confident push out from Sylvan and Meteor on the north side from B, because they're really confident in A, and they know that there's no trips, no cam, because that Cypher just got killed instantly. DRX don't cancel their initial idea of a 4-1 A hit, and T1 are already on A in pretty good anchor positions. There's 3 players on A, and Sylvan is running right now through Dish to be able to still get his smokes down in a good timing. There goes the sand smoke. There goes the A main smoke. And these are really good for the players that are going to be playing in hard anchor positions. They dodge the Teho ult and then run back in to try to fight the smokes. So they're still here, despite the Teho ultimate, holding these smokes and ready to fight. Never allowing a plant to go down. In this next example from Fracture, it's a small mistake from the attackers that allows T1 the time to play their style. Stax is here, ready to deny. Sylvan's still got full utility with a minute on the clock. Smoke goes down on the choke point based off somebody's contact. Molly goes down in the choke point as well. The VOD's just a bit broken. So now there's a molly in the choke. Watch what happens to DRX here as they try to pop through this smoke. They have to wait out the molly. So they, you know, T1 are already going to have 3 players here. And accidentally, there's a team flash inside the smoke, which stops this first wave exec. And that buys enough time for suddenly Taeho missiles. In a moment, Taeho stun as well as soon as the missiles have expired. And now, they're ready to fight even after this breach ultimate. There's a player behind of Meteor. There's 4 players on site. This hit is gonna get crushed. This style requires every piece of the T1 puzzle to be working together in perfect unison. You need the incredible anchor players of Buzz and Meteor. You need Stacks with his perfect reads on the defense side to know exactly when to rotate and what tiny cues to gamble on. And you need the perfect supportive utility from people like Itzu and Sylvan. And there is no denying that Sylvan's utility support was immaculate, but his record-breaking assist numbers are a symptom of the style that T1 chose, and that is the secret to their success. How their unity and their style defined a run at Masters Bangkok by playing anti-meta, not with the meta. The relentless denial of space and the refusal to play a retake whenever they possibly could. It does seem remarkably simple in hindsight that the best team of the post-plant meta was the team who never even got into the post-plants when they were playing defense. They alone, out of all of the teams in Valorant competing for that trophy, figured out one simple trick, and it led them to a victory that they will never forget.
But the best team in the world!
A team built to win trophies, a super team, and they have absolutely proved it. Everybody had their moments here today.